Kalimera. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. We're going to continue with our Bible study this morning. And I think some of the things that we're going to say you've probably heard before, and you're wondering, that's exactly where they came from. And we're going to speak about the Beatitudes. I don't know if you've ever read the Beatitudes. Does that mean anything to any of you? What are the Beatitudes? Anybody know what the Beatitudes are? Say it. A little louder. Sermon on the Mount, yes? Yes. And you've heard it before. Why? Because everyone thinks it doesn't make sense. Blessed are the poor, for they shall inherit the kingdom of heaven. And people say, wait a minute. In order to get the kingdom of heaven, I have to get more possessions. I have to take more things with me. I have to put more things in my trailer that's going to be behind the hearse when it drives to the cemetery. So the complete opposite. We're going to talk about the makarismi. That's what they're called in Greek. They're beautiful things. If you turn in your Bibles in the pews, you can follow along with me. It's Matthew chapter 4, page 12. Matthew chapter 4, it starts at verse 23. This is the summary of Jesus' ministry. It begins by talking about that. And Jesus went out about all Galilee, teaching in the synagogues, preaching the gospel of the kingdom, healing all kinds of sicknesses, all kinds of diseases among the people. So we're talking here about the fame, the excitement that people had, especially his apostles, that his ministry was a success. Because there were a lot of people trying to say, no, he's not a success. He's a charlatan. He's a faker. These things are magic that he's done. And then we're going to go on, and we'll show you a little more. Then his fame went throughout all of Syria, and they brought to him all the sick who were afflicted with various diseases, and torments, and those who were demon-possessed, epileptics, paralytics, and he healed them. That's a very important statement. These people had diseases that no one could understand. Mind you, at the time, medicine was not as advanced as it is today. Yesterday, any doctors here today? Any doctors yet? Well, Dr. Z is here. He left. Okay, I'll be okay. I'll get his forgiveness later. Yesterday, I heard from the television set, where I usually get my news, that over 100,000 people died unnecessarily this past year in hospitals. 100,000 people. For mistakes, things that happen. That's a lot of people. So it gives you the list of things you're supposed to watch. Now, in Jesus' time, there were no big hospitals. There were no CAT scans. There were no PET scans. None of this stuff existed. Intravenous, what are you talking about? So these people were in very bad shape. And they were brought to Jesus and he healed them. And that's what drove his detractors crazy, that this man was doing things that we could not do. And they were the supposed holy people of the time. All right, so we'll go on. Great multitudes followed him from Galilee and from Decapolis, Jerusalem, Judea, and beyond the Jordan. Here come the Beatitudes. The blessings of the true discipleship. And seeing the multitudes, he went up on the mountain, and when he was seated, his disciples with him, then he opened his mouth and taught them, saying. Now, I have been to this place, I would say at least 5 times, and we're going again, for those of you that want to travel with us, in March 5th to the 14th, we're going to the Holy Land again. And this spot is an amazing location where they have built churches now. And you'll see the different churches, and you can actually see the hill, the mountain where Jesus was. Now, it's not, Pikes Peak, all right? But in that time, it was a mountain to the people. Or almost like an amphitheater. It goes right up. And there were 5,000. Many people sit there. So he opened his mouth. He said, Blessed are the poor, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when they revile you and persecute you, and they say all kinds of evil against you falsely for my name's sake. Rejoice and be exceedingly glad, for great is your reward in heaven, for so they persecuted the prophets who were before you. Now, one could say, in reading that, well, who wants to do that? Who wants to be poor? Who wants to be meek? Mind you, meek doesn't mean weak, okay? Meek means knowing what's coming at you in both directions and knowing how to act. Meek doesn't mean weak, cowering. Meek is a sign of wisdom. It's a sign of discernment, okay? Now, we spoke first about the sicknesses, that he was able to heal them. Let's go to the makarismi, the Sermon on the Mount. The material is arranged artistically, but he omits here, it's not omitted in the Gospel of Matthew and Luke, in Mark and Luke, but it's omitted here, his decision of who his disciples would be. That doesn't appear in this particular spot, and it does elsewhere. As God spoke from the mountain in Moses' time, so now he speaks from the mountain in Jesus' time. It's classic teaching. Opening of the mouth in the ancient word is opening the mouth, therefore there was a transference of knowledge to other people. It's not like today, blah, 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 all kinds of saklamares come out of our mouths, right? This was teaching. This was seriousness. This wasn't just fuskis, as they say in Greek. A lot of noise just to fill up a room. This was actual teaching that would benefit someone. So the Beatitudes, just as the Ten Commandments stand at the head of what's called Mosaic instruction, the Beatitudes stand at the head of the Sermon on the Mount. The Beatitudes, like the rest of the sermon, are not moralistic teachings, but they are promises to Christ's disciples. Listen to that carefully. They're not moral teachings, but promises. So he says, if you do this, you'll receive this. If you do that, you'll get that. He doesn't say, you need to be a good boy, you need to be a good girl, you need to be good parents, you need to be good grandparents. No. He's saying, if you act this way, your reward will be in heaven. Now, we live, of course, in a world that wants the result now. We don't want to wait until we die, until we go to heaven or hell, right? We want it now. We live in an instant gratification society. And I have to tell you that I've learned that gratification doesn't come at that moment. It comes many times a lot later. But we have to be patient. We're not a patient people anymore. We want everything when we want it. I'm sorry, that's not reality in the eyes of the church. As like everything else in Matthew's gospel, they are placed in a certain context. The teaching comes for that time. The rival practice of the Pharisees must be kept in mind as the background to the Sermon of the Mount, for Christ explicitly contrasts his teachings with the popular teachings of the Pharisees. The Pharisees denounced Jesus' followers as the most hapless and pathetic of men. So how do you knock someone down? You criticize them. How do you knock someone down? He's of no use. That's how we do it. So we lift ourselves up. We knock everybody else down. That's how the Pharisees did it. Those Christians are crazy. Look what they're doing. They're following this crazy man who comes around. He's probably demon possessed. Look how he healed all these people. Lie upon lie upon lie. So that the Christians were saying, how do you train someone? You put what? Question mark. Put a question mark in the person's head. And that's what's happening today. People are questioning so much that they don't believe. Again, we talked about it over the weekend. We believe in the spectacular rather than the sacred, even though the sacred has been proved. We still believe in the spectacular. Something new. Oh, a change. Oh, a new teaching. Oh, a new gospel. It's nothing new. It's very, very secure. And it is for centuries. That's our faith. So the Beatitudes are very important, and they come at a complete opposite, again, to what the Pharisees are teaching. Remember, Matthew was, what was he? What was Matthew? He was a Jew. He wasn't a Greek. Be careful, okay? Even though we say Mattheos, and he's up here, Mattheos, okay? He was a Jew. And the Jew was going against the Jews. And I'm not painting a big brush here and wiping out the Jewish nation, so don't take me that way. I'm not prejudiced, okay? But I'm calling a spade a spade. It is what it is. Matthew was a Jew. He was a Christian. He was a follower of Christ. But he wasn't a Greek, okay? So we understand that. It's very important that we understand the truth about what's in the Gospels. The Beatitudes are therefore not recommendations or commentations for a certain status of mind. Christ focuses not on the virtue of his followers, careful, listen, but on the fact that they are downtrodden, and says this will all be reversed in the time to come. We said what? Poor in spirit, those who mourn, those who are meek, those who hunger, those who thirst, those who are merciful, those who are peacemakers, those who are persecuted. Now, let's realize that the Christians, don't look now where people are continuing to come into the church freely. You look back then, when you could not. The people that were, the Christians that were at the cross when Christ was crucified, they cowered. They stood there and they said, I don't know what will happen to me. I love my Lord, I'll stand with my Lord. But the others didn't even show up. Many of the apostles didn't even show up when he was crucified. They ran because they were persecuted. They did not want them to succeed. And yet, who has remained over the 2,000 years? Them or Christ? Look at the reality of history. And anyone that knows the reality of history could not deny that God is who he is. Christ is who he was. So, we talked about, blessed are you, the poor in spirit, for they will receive the kingdom. Blessed are those who mourn. Okay? We go on and on. Blessed are the meek. We said meek and weak. Be careful with that one. Blessed are the peacemakers. How many times have you been in a room or an event and someone starts gossiping about someone else? How many times? If you've ever been in that situation, raise your hands. Every hand should go up. Okay? Because at some point, somebody's going to gossip about somebody else. They either don't like them, they spoke the wrong way, they took money from their will, who knows? All kinds of things we come up with. Okay? But the reality is, we could stand there or we could say, come on, why are you speaking that way? Let's change the subject. You could change the subject too. But sometimes we sit there and we become a part of that conversation. That's the danger, becoming part of that conversation. So a peacemaker is someone who looks to make peace. How? By seeing the common things that are in a situation and lifting those up rather than spreading all the negative around. So the peacemaker is the one who sees a situation and says, okay, he's wrong, she's wrong, but, let's walk in the middle where the truth lies. I haven't met anybody perfect yet on the earth. Have you? Have you met anybody perfect? Just asking. Okay. Blessed are you if you're persecuted for righteousness' sake. So here you live a life and you're persecuted because you live the life? How about the Christians in Egypt? How about last month when 60 churches were burned in Syria? 60 churches. Christian churches. Talk about persecution. I don't know if you saw some of the videotape, how the Christians were trying to hold the gates closed, and they broke the gates open to people, and they came in and they beat the living daylights out of the Christians that were in there. Today, this happened a month ago in Syria. Not 1,600 years ago. Simera. So there are people who are suffering and who are persecuted for Christ. All right? Blessed are you when they reproach you, persecute you, all kinds of evil against you falsely. Tough stuff. But here's the end of it. You yourselves are the salt of the earth. You yourselves are the light of the world. Thus let your light shine before men, that they may see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven. So, salt at the time was the thing that kept everything going. They used it to preserve, to make things taste good. Salt was the number one quantity at the time. It wasn't oil, it was salt. So, Matthew says, you are the salt of the earth. So he raises us up to the point to say, we are important. We're not some scupidi, we're not some piece of garbage. We have and we are here because of Christ. And therefore, we honor that. We live above the scupidia, the garbage of the earth. Not that we're better, not that we're egotistical, but that we were called for a greater mission. And our children were called for a greater mission. And our grandchildren were called for a greater mission. But we have to show the way. If we don't show the way, don't be surprised if they do like water. They follow the path of least resistance. Being a Christian is not an easy thing, especially in today's world that tries to pull us in different ways. But again, please remember that the Makarismi, the Beatitudes, are not moral teachings, but what they are teachings that show if you live like this, this is your reward in heaven. And read them. When you go home tonight, go home and read them. All right? We said it. It's in the Gospel of Matthew. That's what we've been talking about this morning. Chapter 4, they start at verse 23 when it speaks about the success of Jesus' ministry and how things are going so well that they want to tell people that. And then he goes into the beautiful Makarismi, the Sermon on the Mount, in the 5th chapter, verses 1 to 12. Amen.